to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And it's a good book. He's not a saved man, but he had some practical stuff in there. He talked about, one of the fellows had something where they had to go to the post office every day. Every day. And the clerk at the post office was very negative, and most post office workers get so bored with people that they get pretty curt. You know how they are. You know how they are. Just sober chops. Well, this fella kept going to this same window, get stamps or whatever, and the fella always had his head down, and he would hardly even look up to see who was at the window. He'd just give them their stamps, take their money or whatever. This guy did this for some time, and then he decided, I think I can help this guy. So one day he went there and he said, you know, sir, I've been coming to this window day after day for months and years, and I've noticed something. You got the most beautiful head of hair that I have ever seen in a man. And that guy looked right up. And he said from that time on, that guy always had a smile and a pleasant word for that fella. All from just one little comment. And I think if you learn secrets like this, when you walk into a house, you're visiting, you knock on a door, and it's maybe unpleasant weather, and they say, would you step inside? And we, sure. And so you step inside, and you look around in that living room, or wherever, in that room, and you say, my, are these your children? Picture on the wall. Yes, those are my children. What a nice looking family. You got them in with Flynn about right there. Or is that a deer that you shot? Is that its head? Yeah, boy, but tell me about that. You got an in with Flynn right there now. You use a little bit of psychology, and it's not lying. Don't you give honest appreciation when you cheat and lie, when you cheapen. I mean, when you're talking, flattery, that doesn't mean, and anybody knows flattery. But when you have a little, somebody told me the other day, they said, have you seen my baby? I said, no. And so she showed me her baby. And I said, now that is a baby. I couldn't say anything else, but I said that. That is a baby. I'm saying God can give you grace to help you in this business of having a good outlook. I want you to notice verse 14 and how it's talking about words again. It's talking about vain words. Whoso boasteth himself of a false gift, like clouds and wind without rain. It's a big disappointment. Somebody that boasts and brags and kind of pretends that he has abilities. We had a kid come to our school, it's probably been 10, 12 years ago. And he was not very athletic, but he wanted to make everybody believe that he was. And it was all from morning to night, boastful, bragging, how he's even shot 40 points in one basketball game and all this kind of stuff. But when it really come right out to the court, he couldn't even find the backboard. He was just the poor kid. I don't know whether he was depressed at home and nobody bragged on him or something, but he just was, he finally got out of school and got in trouble because he just was full of boasting. I want to tell you that Christians, we don't do that. We don't talk about ourselves, brag on our gifts, which we don't even have, or promise much more than we're able to give. Or do you know, look around the room, would you look around the room? Do you know anybody in here that's a windbag? Now don't you girls or boys pick on each other. But every family has a windbag, just about. Somebody that's real gabby, somebody that really feels like they're the cockaroos. But just remember this, that nobody is interested in what you're saying because they can't depend on you because you don't fulfill what you talk about. You may say you're going to do something, but you never do it. That's not Christianity. You're a windbag. I want to ask you something, and don't answer me. Are you the Christian that you'd like to make everybody believe that you are? Are you the husband that you'd like to make your wife believe that you are? Are you the wife that really you'd like to make your husband believe, but you kind of windjam and flim-flam and do this and that, trying to make him or make her believe that you're something extra special? And really, children, would you do the same to your parents or your parents to your children or your friends? Really, the whole thing boils down, Christians have to be what they claim to be. Are you the soul winner that you claim to be? Are you the giver of finances? Do you really give like you'd like to make everybody believe, church? Are you as honest as you would like to make people believe that you're honest? Or are you just a windbag? Our character building lesson is just don't be braggadocious. Don't be a person with wall-to-wall mouth. Boy. Just be honest and be faithful. And do what you say you're going to do. And don't brag on how wonderful you are. Listen, nobody wants to hear it. You know what they wanted to hear? They want to hear how wonderful they are, not how wonderful you are. That's good preaching, Brother Brian. Let me try to take another one. And verse 15. This is some more words. It's kind words. By long forbearing, a prince persuaded. By a long forbearance is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bones. He's talking about a prince, but really we're talking about somebody that is a leader, maybe a judge, maybe some magistrate. The Bible talks about princes sitting in the gate as judges. We're talking about setting in motion something to help you to persuade others in authority and not to go against you. For instance, in court, what do? You speak softly. A soft tongue. It will subdue people. It'll overcome people. Even the most obstinate resistance can be turned away by the way you speak. I hope I could just emphasize, stay away from harsh words. Argumentative words, yelling words, shouting words. If you can learn to keep cool and give sweet words and soft words to your dad, to your mother, to your principal at school, to the police officer, to the judge, to the referee at the basketball game, or the umpire at the baseball game, to your wife, to your husband. This is character building. You learn to not to raise your voice. I don't know if you men, you boys, particularly you men that are married, you can't yell at your wife. Oh yeah, you can. But you can't yell at your wife. She cannot take it. They're not built to take it. They are the weaker sex. And when you yell at them, it threatens them. They know that physically they can't box you or wrestle with you, and so they seem to be defensive. And you throw them into a panic. If you want to get somewhere with your wife, or you talk to her in a sweet, low tone, you don't have to agree with her. You can certainly have a dispute, but don't yell at your wife. She cannot take it. Am I telling it right? Am I right? See, I'm telling them right. I'm right. They can't take it. So if you say, well, I give her a piece of my mind, well, you don't do that. You can do that, but do it in a low tone, sweetheart. There's something going on here that isn't just right. And I want to tell you about it. I'm not mad at you. I love you. But you got to listen to me. This has got to stop. I can't put up with it, and I want you to understand that. Or you could just yell and scream. Go right ahead. But you're probably a fool. Soft words. Could you ever possibly say, I'm sorry? Or you're right and I'm wrong? Or please have mercy on me. It was all my fault. I'm going to take all the blame. A soft tongue breaketh the bones. Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Gentleness will most generally disarm the most furious person. But angry words will create wrath. I know what God expects. He said, the Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. God dwells with people who have contrite hearts, soft hearts. Job said, God has made my heart soft. When you feel like you're getting hard-hearted, or maybe hard-headed, would you ask God to help you not to be like that? That is not Christian. And I hope you don't misunderstand me. I wouldn't like, I hate to see a man a milk toast. I hate to see just cowtail down to some stupid woman. It's dumb to do that. It's not right to do that. And you don't have to break that law, but you can be sweet and kind and loving and thoughtful and considerate and still get the job done. Can you understand that? That's a soft tongue breaks bones. One of the highest class, one of the highest qualities of a Christian is that he's sweet and kind and thoughtful. That's Christianity, basically. Even it was said about Christ that a broken reed he would not break. You know what it said? You know what you say, well, he was a cream puff. Oh, don't you say that to me, because you don't know what you're talking about. But his mannerism was that he was kind and thoughtful. And it'll help you to win souls. It'll break the resistance down with your kindness. It'll help you to win friends and keep your friends. It'll help you to win arguments, or at least stay out of them if you're kind. But I wanted to repeat something. No one has ever won an argument. No one has. When you get through with an argument, you think, I put them in. No, you hurt them. So you didn't really, nobody ever wins an argument. Somebody is going to lose and somebody's going to get hurt. And if you could again say, I'm sorry and I'm right and you're wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right. And but it'll help you to learn a lot, win a lot of respect for yourself. Somebody has rightfully said, Brother Armstrong, that it's nice to be important. But somebody else said it's more important to be nice. I'll say that again. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. Help you to win favor with your parents, to win favor with your boyfriend, with your girlfriend. It just is a part of a Christian's life, is to be kind. Learn how to talk. Be sweet. Be kind. Be thoughtful. And you'll be a far better Christian as you do those few things that have been suggested here in Proverbs 25:16. I'm going to go to 16. I'm going to try to do one more verse, at least. Hast thou found honey? Eat so much as sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit it. This verse teaches moderation in just about everything in your life. Moderation with what you eat, food, your work, your enjoyment, your recreation. A little is good. Too much is too much. You can't beat it, boy. Honey is so sweet. It is so good. I've heard people tell me lately, I don't like honey. I feel sorry for you. Your taste buds got mixed up on the nipple on your bottle when you was a kid. Something's wrong somewhere with your life if you don't like honey. But too much honey makes you sick. And I've known people, I have known people, Donna, that was so sweet they were sickening. You've been around that kind of people. I don't trust them. I don't trust them. They're just too sweet. Just, but what I'm trying to say is there's a moderation here. Like all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Somebody said all work and no play makes Jack, makes a lot of money. But all play and no work makes you a poor boy. There's balance. The proverb, Solomon said, the legs of a lame man are not equal. when he said that, he's talking about a person that is one leg shorter than the other is lopsided, and they walk. Whenever they walk with a limp. And I'm not saying this bad, I'm saying it the right spirit, but a person like that is sort of obnoxious to others. If you're around them, you just, you know, you love them, but there's something wrong with this guy. One leg is shorter than the other. And he's not a balanced person. And if this guy is all sports and all you're talking about, blah, 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 how this guy is about a batting average and this guy's got so many yards every time he runs, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? Who cares about it all? You got people that are all sports and they have no other interest. And then you have people that are all jokes and funny stories and no seriousness about it. And you got people that are so serious, they're so sober, they look like they could eat oatmeal out of a butter churn. Sour as pickles. And I don't know, there's a balance here. There's time to study and there's a time for recreation. There's a time for the Bible, and then there's a time for human interest, and there's you just balance out your life. I'm sorry, but Christianity is a wonderful life. It isn't a boredom. You look at me and you say, well, all he must do is read his Bible and pray, and read his Bible and pray. Well, I do that. But I do other things too. I love life. I have a good time. I have a little humor and fun and fellowship and come here and go there and do this and do that and the other thing within the lines, of course, of Christianity. But if you're just all, you know, I've been around people that are just all the time talking about the Bible, Bible. Sure, it's good to talk about the Bible. But there are other things to talk about too, and enjoy other things, and not be a screwball nincompoop. You say, I don't like that, Brother Green. I didn't really care if you do. I'm giving you some advice. You can have Christianity and have a wonderful time at it. And I don't think, I'm not trying to be smart aleck or super spiritual, but I would imagine that I study my Bible and read my Bible and pray as much or more than anybody in this room. But on the other hand, I can have a lot of fun and fellowship too and enjoy friends and one thing another. And if you just go right to, you know, you could just go right to a monastery and be a monk. If you wanted to be a recluse and sit over there and that's what you wanted. But God wants you to live and enjoy your life and enjoy your family, enjoy your friends, enjoy nature, enjoy, you know, that's what he's talking about here. He's talking about, hast thou found honey? Eat so much as is sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit. Get sick over it. And make other people sick too. I haven't got time, but boy, I wanted to get to this next verse because it continues to talk about too much is too much. Withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, lest he weary of thee, and so hate thee. Don't be stupid. Nice to have friends, but they get sick and tired of you, especially if you come and eat up their groceries. Nice, don't show up at lunchtime. I'm going to leave that for next week because it is an important character building lesson. This is chapter 25, and we are going to begin with verse 17.
Proverbs 25:17. It's several lessons tonight. They're all important lessons, kind of character building structure for all of our lives. They help us to mature, help us to develop integrity for our lives. Basically, this class is not a class. It's not a Sunday school class. It's not a preaching service. It's basically for people who are interested in developing their life for Christian service. And so when I speak, I don't talk like I was in the pulpit, nor teaching a Sunday school class, but very candidly, outspokenly, and sometimes it might be a little crude because I'm not here, like I say, as a pastor. I'm here as an instructor and trying to get your hearts and minds set up for a life of Christian service. Proverbs 25:17. Withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, lest he be weary of thee, and so hate thee. Really, what Solomon is talking about is too much is too much. It's all right to visit with your neighbor, and be kind to your neighbor, and have friendly situation, but it's not something for you to camp at your neighbor's house. Really teaches a lot of moderation, just about in everything that there is in life. Too much familiarity breeds contempt. I remember something that Benjamin Franklin said, that dead fish and company stink after 3 days. And that's about the truth of it. And it's nice to have people come and go, but it's better to have them leave and you're sorry that they left. After they left, you felt bad about it, rather than having them come and then be a nuisance. I've never been very anxious to see couples in the church become buddy-buddy with other couples in the church. Usually it doesn't end up just right. Sooner or later, they become so familiar with one another that many times they'll even swap wives and husbands. I don't mean that's happened over and over again, but too many times your best friend runs off with your mate. Can you understand that? I don't know if you can or not. But when you're around each other, you begin to say things and take liberties that you wouldn't take after you become so familiar. You talk about things that you would guard in any other conversation, but you become so used to these people. He said, withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, lest he weary of thee and hate thee. Our Christian life, and especially Christian leaders, we have to be careful that we don't wear out our welcome. People get tired of us. So you make visits, and we always are making visits. That's Christianity. That's our service is knocking on doors, inviting people to church, caring for needy people, calling on absentees, making hospital visits. But when you do this, you don't stay all day. You just make a quick pop in, pop off, and pop out. You just get in and get the job done and go. Just basically don't make a nuisance of yourself and take advantage of people. Especially, there are some people that are extremely kind. And some people will take advantage of kind people. So too much really of anything is really not good. Just don't stay very long. Let people glad to see you come. And let them say, I wish you didn't have to hurry so much. I wish you could stay a while. But that's better than say, boy, I'm glad they're gone. You understand what I'm saying? Never, and when we're in the Lord's work, this is basically what this class is about. Try to avoid going to a house at mealtime, because if they're gracious, they'll invite you for the meal, and that is really, they may not want to, they may not have enough. And besides that, they didn't plan on you when you dropped in. You could make that sort of a habit, you wouldn't have to buy groceries, you understand that? But there's a lot of connections with this business of how to operate, and one of them is never borrow anything from a neighbor and then fail to take it back. Maybe you borrowed a couple eggs to make a cake, and you better be sure you take them back. There's goodness and badness in all of that. It's best not to borrow. Best not to borrow your neighbor's lawnmower. You break it, you do break it, you better get it fixed. But if that happens very many times, they won't want you to have their lawnmower, or their shovel, or their rake, or their weed blower, or their leaf blower, or whatever it might be. Our whole structure of Christian service is involved in a saying, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Don't bug people. Don't take advantage of people. Don't take over the house. Don't open the refrigerator door to see what they got in there. You know how that goes. Well, you can get so familiar with it that that's what you do. And I think the whole scheme of this, what Solomon is saying, that develop to be a Christian gentleman, a Christian lady, and be always willing to lend to your neighbor, but be careful about borrowing something from your neighbor. Keep your respect and keep your welcome and keep your presence, and really, I think it could be summed up pretty well with Dr. Bob Jones' statement, just do right. And then you can go a long ways with just doing what's the right thing. Let's go to the next verse. You'll have to admit that these verses, every one of them are loaded with Christian character. Just common sense is what it amounts to. Verse 18, a man that beareth false witness against his neighbor is a maul and a sword and a sharp arrow. He said a false witness, that's a liar. He said that they're like a maul. Now, I'm not sure. I really did my homework, and I looked up in Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary, which is pretty well has every word that the King James has in it. You know what a maul is? It's like a sledgehammer is what a maul is, but it's really not. In the connotation of this verse, I think it's more like a war club, because it's identified with a sword and a sharp arrow. And back in those days, clubs were used pretty well too as a weapon. And it was kind of a wooden hammer, wooden sledgehammer. Not like a tomahawk of an Indian, but it was a weapon of destruction anyway. And person that is a liar, that's what he is. He's a weapon of destruction. A liar, false witness. He is a destructiveness to your reputation and a weapon of really a war to your life. I wish that we could all grow up as Christians and become mature people and stop your false witnessing, stop your lying. You don't have to lie. I like what Abraham Lincoln said. He said, if you don't tell a lie, you won't have to remember what you said. That's a pretty good thing, isn't it, really? But if you lie, you got to remember what you lied about. And some people are just professional liars. They just, when it'd be a lot easier just to tell the truth. And you don't have to get involved in all of that work that comes to follow such a thing. Let's look at verse 19. Confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a broken foot or broken tooth and a foot that's out of joint. We're talking about unfaithfulness. And an unfaithful person, of course, is like a broken tooth in that it's annoying. If you ever had a toothache, if you ever had a broken tooth or a toothache that comes as a result of that, or if you ever had a foot that was out of joint or a bone or any joint out of joint, it's painful. And so is a person that is unfaithful. Brings discomfort and is like a toothache. Really to be unfaithful is to be deceitful. People are depending upon you to do certain things and then you let them down. I over the years have really made quite a study of this sort of thing. There was a man in the Bible, his name was Reuben. And Reuben was the oldest child of Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons. Those 12 sons became the 12 tribes of Israel. And Reuben was the oldest of all of those people. But it was said about, Jacob said it himself. He said he was unstable as water. Thou shalt not excel. And of course, Reuben did a nasty, dirty, rotten thing. He went to bed with Jacob's wife, which is a no-no. And he lost out. He could have been Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Reuben, because he was the head of the whole thing. But he lost out in his ranking. And if you remember the story, and Judah took first place. But when you're unfaithful, that means that basically you're inconsistent. And it always shows up in your life as a lack of steadfastness, a lack of sincerity, a lack of stick-to-itiveness. I say that's a 25-cent word, stick-to-itiveness. You don't stick to it. You know, you're not single of heart. You're not so faithful as you ought to be to the cause of Christ. When you don't fail, when you don't show up where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, it hurts your testimony. Now, people are pretty good. I've been working with people all my life, and people will forgive you once or twice or 3 times. But when you kind of consistently are inconsistent and not faithful, people put a question mark, say, does this guy know what he's doing? Does he really care? Is his heart really in this thing? How can he be late every time? How can he not show up this time? And you can't do that. You have to be faithful. It is required of a steward that he be found faithful. And that's a big thing in Christian affairs. I may not be the greatest preacher, or I may not be the smartest preacher, or I may not be the oldest preacher, but I would like to be one of those most faithful preachers. And everybody can be faithful. You can't be a lot of things, but you can be faithful. And it'll show up in your Christian service with a lack of power. It'll show up in your personality. It'll show up in your personal life, in your public life. And when you stand before God, finally after death, I would like him to say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. And I'm saying to you, if you're not going to do anything else, be faithful. When you're not faithful, it shows coldness and callousness and carelessness and carnality. Really, can you look at me just for a moment? I want to tell you something. Wouldn't you want to be used of God some way, somehow, someday? Then be convenient for God. If he's got something for you to do, you're not off somewhere else. You're right where you ought to be all the time, and God can say, well, there's a guy right there. He's faithful, and I can depend on him to do this job, and he'll lay something on your heart. I want to be convenient. I want to be consecrated. I want to be controlled by God. I want to be conformable to do his will. I want to be careful not to miss God's will for my life. I want to really be completely yielded to him and counted worthy to be used of the Lord. In our little verse it said, a man that, well, I got too many here. We're talking about an unfaithful person. We're talking about somebody that does not get to where he's supposed to be. Confidence in an unfaithful man in the time of trouble is like a broken tooth and a foot that is out of joint. It's just painful. It's hard to put up with. I'm going to go on to the next verse. Donna, I'm going to try to finish the chapter. I'm very slow, but I'm not going to guarantee that. I will try. Verse 20. As he that taketh away a garment in cold weather And as vinegar upon nitre, so is that singeth songs to a heavy heart. You know, there are some things that just don't make sense. And one of them is to take a garment off when it's cold. You know, you see these little teeny bopper kids going around with a t-shirt on in the wintertime, and they're stupid. Or they got a nice jacket, but they leave it open, and the weather is 10 below zero. But it looks cool, you know. It doesn't look cool if you got it all buttoned up and got your stocking cap on. You don't look cool. So you look like you're macho or something or other. Found out what macho means. In Spanish, it means donkey. So that's probably what you are. But anyway, I say that it doesn't fit. It isn't right taking a garment off in cold weather, and you put them on, you don't take them off. And then he talks about vinegar upon nitre. And I'm serious. I read after several scholars to figure out what nitre was. I even called the pharmacy that I get my prescriptions from. And he did not know. And he said, I'll ask every pharmacist that was in the drugstore, and there was quite a few of them. None of them knew what nitre was. Well, I looked up in the Webster's 1828, and it gave me some sort of an idea, but it was kind of vague. I read after 2 or 3 different other scholars, and I come up with the idea that it is something that is used in cooking, or something that is used in cleaning. Several suggested that it was like soda, sodium nitrate. Are you listening to me?
Yes, sir.
That's probably what it is, but nobody really knows. I was reading after this famous scholar from Pensacola, and I won't mention his name, but he was really having a lot of fun with this, because the ASV said this, and the other one said this, and he said there was some wild ideas. One of them was that one of the scholars said that nitre was the wound, putting vinegar on a wound. And then he compared that with others, and he said, that's a cornball, and he was, but anyway, I don't know if you've ever done it, but when we were kids, we used to put vinegar in a bottle with a cork on the top, and put soda down in there, and that gets so fizzed up in such a hurry, it'd blow that cork and hit the ceiling with a cork. A lot of power inside of that thing. And I think that the idea here is that you're going to create some sort of a situation when you do dumb things, like singing a song to somebody who's got a heavy heart. They're not interested in hearing it. I mean, Brother Gunning, I read that this nitre was used in making gunpowder, and it probably is. Anyway, when you mix nitre and vinegar together, you're going to get something that's going to have some fizz to it. And when you sing songs to somebody that's heavy-hearted, it's not going to have a good reaction. That's basically what he's trying to say. The wrong reaction anyway. It's really something, are you listening to me, class? It's something that's out of place. It just is not right to take your coat off in the winter, and it isn't right
it isn't right to mix vinegar and soda together unless you're interested in something big bad to happen. And it's not the best thing to do, is to try to sing a song to somebody that's going through some bad situation. Have you been around, all of us have been around funeral homes. I have a little pet peeve. One of them is when people get together at a funeral home, it's usually family and friends of the person that's died. And they get laughing and telling jokes, and I know it's not a time to cry necessarily all the time, but I mean, it's not a fun time either. Here's this man, or here's this woman that's lost their mate, and you're just having a big time telling jokes and fooling around when their heart is broken over the situation. And I think there is something to do with this, in this character building lesson. Just don't laugh and fool around at something that is serious. There's no time for levity, no time for jokes. It's just sad. I told my wife, everybody talks about people dying and have celebrations. I don't want a celebration at my funeral. I told her, don't celebrate at my funeral. I'd rather have you cry a little bit at least. Saying, yippee, he's dead, hallelujah. No, but it's about like somebody that, laughs and fool around while somebody is praying. You're praying and somebody else is giddishly fooling around. Or maybe in church you're talking while the preacher is pouring out his heart. You're talking to your neighbor back here, and the preacher sees you talking, and his heart is, he spent hours preparing a sermon, and you're just chit-chatting with your neighbor in the back. Or right when he gets ready to make his point, you get up and walk out and go get a stupid drink of water. It's just a part of, now I couldn't tell everybody this, but we're Christians, and we're trying to build character, and we're trying to put our lives together to be used of God. Respect people that are doing something religiously. It wouldn't even hurt for you when you come down the street and there's a funeral procession coming the opposite direction, that you'd pull off the side of the road while a hearse and the family go by. And show, he said, I don't even know the people. You can still show some respect for those people. And by no means speed around the whole thing. You're not that busy, and you're not that much of a hurry. It's character is what it is, and just keep quiet around people that are grieving, and take off your hat when you pledge allegiance. Little things, but they're sincere things, just to be respectful is our character building lesson. Just some things here that are out of place. I have a lot of little pet peeves. I hardly ever say anything about it. But I hate to see somebody in the choir chewing gum while they're trying to sing gospel hymn or anthem or something, and between, it doesn't look right. It isn't right. And I know that if you look underneath the seat of the pew, you'd find a lot of chewing gum. People come bringing their chewing gum to church, and they put it under the pew. But it's just something that's just not right. I mean, it's not right to bring your dog to church. Let's say that. You know, just leave them to home or something. There's just some things that isn't just right, and some things that would sour up people. And ferment, like putting vinegar on soda, and it would just upset people, and they would blow their stack. And I just say there are some things that just don't, they're just not right. It's not right for you
girls to wear a miniskirt to church. It's not right to wear them anywhere, but I wouldn't wear it. It doesn't fit, it's not right. The shorts, you know, swimming suits. You fellas wear a shirt and tie when you go to church. We're not gonna kick you out, but I think whatever happens is that we wear our best clothes to church. That's been, now, I'm not saying this fella gets come in out of the field of hunting, I just come out to, but I was out maybe a little earlier than you was. You have 30 miles to come to class tonight. But I just said, don't think a thing about it, but I just say, basically speaking, I think everybody ought to wear their best clothes to church. I see my people that have been in this church for 40 years, come in sag rag bags. They don't need it, they got good clothes. I say that there are some things in our text, in this little text, some things that are just not right. They don't fit, and they hurt your testimony. And that's what we're talking about, is gaining a testimony and maintaining that testimony down through the years. I spent enough time there. Let's go to the next verse, chapter 25, verse 21. I'll read verse 22 also, maybe I can hurry. If thine enemy be hungry, give him bread to eat. And if he be thirsty, give him water to drink. For thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord shall reward thee. That's almost like Romans 12 and 20. Paul said it. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. And then he said, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. What we're talking about here is do good to those that despitefully use you. I have been in the ministry 56 years. I've had people do me dirt, unkind, said a lot of critical things. I have been shot out of the saddle, Brother Dale, lots of times. But what do you do in reaction? Shoot them out of the saddle? No. You just turn around and be nice to them and love them in spite of their unlovable nature. You love them. Now, I'm not talking to my church family. I'm not talking to my Sunday school class. I'm talking to you character building people here. We just turn one cheek and the other cheek. We do that. I can't do that. I'm a fighter. Well, then don't bother to serve the Lord, because you will have to somehow learn to swallow. My dad was a Baptist preacher. He told me that when I went into the ministry, he said, now, Don, if they'll spit in your face sooner or later. But he said, what you do is you wipe it off and you smile and you go right on. If you don't do that, then you will fall by the wayside along with these jerks that spit in your face. So you have to have character to overcome. And if you love your enemies, it'll drive them nuts. They won't know what to do with a jerk like you that won't fight with them. And you turn right around and do good. I mean, Paul said, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Do good things to those that despitefully use you. Now that is a height of Christianity. And it's a part of learning, though, and it's not a very easy thing. I've said it many times in this class, but the things that are the hardest for you to do are normally the best things for you to do. The things you don't want to do, and you go ahead and do them anyway, that's best thing. You didn't want to take the garbage out, but you took it out anyway.
You didn't want to have to clean the toilet stool, but you did it anyway. That's character. You do the things that you don't want to do. You don't want to get out of the bed and go to work, but it's the best thing for you to do, get out of work and go to bed. Get out of bed and go to work. I said it right the first time, didn't I? You heap coals of fire. You're talking about piling up your good deeds on somebody that's your enemy, and just kind of puts them to shame somewhat. Makes them feel kind of some deep pains of maybe repentance. Greg, do you know you're saved tonight?
Yes.
Do you know why you're saved? It was the goodness of God that brought you to repentance. That's what Paul said. God was so good to you when you were ugly towards him. Isn't that right?
Right.
And he turned right around and gave you blessings and gifts and good things. And you say, oh God, you're so good to me. And I've been such a rascal. That's God's way of doing things. And if you want to act like God and like Christ, then you have to kind of turn your life around and come at it another way, which is not the easy thing to do. Our easy thing was ball up our fist and get even with somebody. But I know that there are a lot of folks, and I don't know why they get involved in all this business of saying that people don't need to repent in order to be saved. But I've never been able to figure that out. Jesus said, except you repent, you shall likewise perish. And that's pretty well the general run of the apostles. They all said the same thing. It would seem like if I offended Brother Armstrong, that the only way I'm ever going to get right with him is to apologize. Say, I'm sorry. He may say, oh, that's all right, but he knows better than that. The guy could at least apologize to me for what he did. And I say that we have messed up with God, we've slandered and done wrong, at least we could apologize. And that's about the same thing as repenting, sorrow in our heart that we've done what we've done, and said what we said. Please, Lord, forgive me. Amen. I'm not preaching, but I could get to preaching here a little bit. But anyway, you comfort folks, and you forgive folks. You be good to those that treat you bad. I know that I probably prayed for it. I don't know how many people a day. I've never counted them. I never wanted to brag on it. Thousands, I suppose, every day. I don't know. But I pray for hundreds of people that have done me wrong. Pray for them every day. I'm not trying to say I'm a great Christian, but I do pray for those that have not done right by me. That's a part of character. You do it whether you want to do it or not. There are some people that I pray for. I have a warmest feeling in my heart when I pray for them. And some others that say, God, please deal with that buzzard. You'd want God to do something, straighten him out somehow. Let me go on in verse 23. The north wind driveth away rain. The so doth an angry countenance, a backbiting tongue. This kind of a good thing for all of us here, to know how to deal with people that are backbiters. Luke 12:54, and he said also to the people, when you see a cloud rise up out of the west, straightway you say the cloud, there cometh a shower, and so it is. And when you see the south wind blow, ye shall say, there will be heat, and it cometh to pass. And in our verse here it says, when the north wind blows, it's going to drive away the wind. And then he said, in the same sense, I don't know about I don't care anything about that north wind. It can be pretty ugly at times, but it does do some good. It drives away the rains. But it turns around and says, in the same way that a north wind will blow away the rain, so an angry countenance, just a look. Here's, let's just say, for instance, here's Dale, and he's talking to Brother Greg, and he's backbiting. He's backbiting. Now, it's pretty hard to bite your back. You can't hardly get to your own back. It means somebody else is biting somebody else behind their back where they cannot hear, they cannot know, and you're talking about them behind their back. That's what you're saying, basically. But if Greg heard Dale say some bad backbiting about the pastor, all Greg would have to do, he wouldn't have to say a word, but he said he could give him sort of a dirty look. That's what it said. I mean, just kind of like an angry countenance. So does an angry countenance a backbiting tongue. Otherwise, I don't appreciate what you're doing. I don't appreciate you saying that about my pastor or my friend, and so you just give him kind of, you know, it's kind of a look. And that's what Solomon is saying, is the best way to take care. And that fellow will stop his backbiting, or that woman will stop her backbiting just by letting them know by your countenance that you don't appreciate them talking about these people that they're talking about. Can you understand what I'm saying? That's quite a simple, but it's backbiting is really a misrepresentation. And it's so degrading and so slanderous and so vilifying of people, hurt somebody's reputation or telling some falsehood to destroy their character or blacken someone's name or bring a black mark upon their name and ruin somebody's reputation. Backbiting, that's a funny name, isn't it? Backbiting looks like sinking your teeth in somebody's back, but it's really kind of sneaky is what it's talking about. You understand what I'm saying? I don't need to explain, you're not little kids, but I think I made my point. It's not right. It's backbiting. Verse 24, it is better to dwell in the corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. I ought to let you explain this one here. Some of you probably had some experience along that line. It's better to dwell on a housetop. Now, I don't, you know, us Michiganders and us people that live in the United States hardly ever get up on the rooftop. But in Israel, in the Middle East, most all of their houses have flat roofs. And it's kind of like another room. Because people do things up on the roof, on the rooftop, that is. They sleep out there at night sometimes. And you remember that little lady that took those spies in at Jerusalem? She had her flax laid out on the roof to dry up there as she was preparing. You can understand. So it's better for a person to dwell in a little shack up on the rooftop than it would be in a broad house with a broad, I guess, with a brawling woman. I never really got in a fight with a woman. A brawling one. I mean a brawling one, somebody that's bigger and tougher than I am. But a woman that wants to quarrel and fight. I think he's saying it'd be better for you to live in a little shack up on the roof than in a beautiful, nice home with somebody that didn't want to live with you peaceably and kind. Solomon said, I'm not going to read them all, but in chapter 19 and verse 3, he talks about a nagging wife is like a continuous dripping. And on a rainy day, drive you crazy. They used to say that Chinese had a torture. They'd put a hole in the bottom of a bucket and hang it over a man, tie him down so he couldn't get away, and that water keep dripping on his forehead. And sooner or later he'd go out of his mind just from that continued drip. And that's about the way it is with a nagging woman. That's what that fella had on his tombstone. Well, she put on there, rest in peace until we meet again. Oh boy, oh boy. You've been around naggers. I know all of you have. And some men are that way, but you usually speak about a nagging woman. A lot of things are better. A lot of things are better than that, and it's better never to marry girls than to marry somebody that's wrong. It's better to live without a mate than to have a mate and be miserable with that mate the rest of your life. I don't know. I don't think I could live with a woman that wasn't a submissive woman. The Bible talks about women submitting themselves to their husbands. Now, that doesn't mean to be a doormat necessarily, and he can wipe his feet on you, you know. When God, are you listening, boys? When God made Eve, he took a rib out of her side, his side, and made a woman so that she could fit right here by his side. He didn't take a bone out of his foot so he could stomp on her. He didn't do that. But he took where he could have somebody that could work with him and fellowship with him and be together in a wonderful way. I want to say this to you girls. You're precious girls. But you be careful when you marry Mr. Right that his first name isn't always or never. Because that you can just have nothing but trouble if you got somebody that is going to bear down on you, and vice versa. When you fellas marry, you want to marry somebody that is the right kind of a person for you. And you wait on the Lord. You don't rush in where angels would fear to tread. And just because they're cute or handsome or have nice clothes, that doesn't mean anything. You know, I want to just say this to you girls particularly. Boys are deceitful. They're not really all that together interested in you. They're just interested in what they can get from you. Men are just about every one of them is dirty in their mind, filthy mind. They are. I don't care. Oh, so no, he's so nice. Yeah, but down inside there's deceit, and a lot of that comes out later on. Women are deceitful. The heart is deceitful and wicked above all things. And one has to be guarded all the time when you're thinking about marriage, particularly, I wouldn't care about living with any woman that wanted to quarrel, and I'd leave, or she'd leave, one or the other. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle it. My mind, my nerves, I couldn't handle that sort of thing. And I know that some of you have to put up with that, but I'm sorry. Solomon said it'd be better to live in the doghouse up on the roof than it would be to live in a nice home with some screwball woman or man that will not be compatible with you. That's good preaching, Brother Green. Verse 25 is cool water to a thirsty soul. So is good news from a far country. Good news. If you're away from home, especially, it's always good to hear from home. It's like a cold drink of water. I remember a story in the Bible about when Joseph was down in Egypt, and Joseph's brothers had mistreated him and sold him as a slave down into Egypt, and took his coat of many colors and dipped it in blood and goat's blood and gave it to his father and made him believe for years and years and years and years that his son was dead. And then one day, those boys come back from getting food in Egypt, and Joseph was the distributor of that food supply. And they come back and said, Joseph is alive, and he wants you to move down to Egypt where he is. And he thought they were not telling the truth. But when he saw the wagons and the provisions for him to move, he knew that his boy was alive. And when he was so happy. And he went down that way, he stopped at Beersheba. And God said, it's all right to go on down and be with your son Joseph. And when they saw each other, they embraced and stayed embraced and kissed each other after a long, long, long time of one thinking the other perhaps was dead and no longer alive. And the spirit of Jacob revived. I know that it's always good to hear good news. And we're talking about character. It's not really our job to be bearers of bad news. And sometimes it is necessary. I can remember when Mrs. Ball, that's Brother Ball's mother, she was here Sunday. But I remember we had the same family doctor. And the doctor called me and said, Pastor, Mrs. Ball's father just died unexpectedly. Would you mind going to the home and telling them? I said, well, I'll do it. And I remember they were in bed when I got there. And they come in their night clothes to the door. And I said, Mrs. Ball, I have some bad news to tell you. Your father just passed away. Well, it's sorrow. That's a part of my job. I've done it many occasions, but I always think of what Rush Limbaugh said about the Democrats. They've always got bad news. That they're always working in the negative, and you read the papers, and 25 more boys were killed over in Iraq, and it looks like they're going to have the worst crop we ever had of corn, and the media is just built around bad news. You just look at today's paper and look at the headlines. All of it's bad news. That's the Democrats for you. Now, if you're a Democrat, I'm on the video. I'm just talking, okay? But I'm just telling what Rush Limbaugh said. But we're fundamental, independent, Bible-believing Christians, and we're not to come around just bad news. You know, like, you say, don't you think Johnny's doing better Yeah, but he's still pretty bad. That's not the way to talk. Our business is negative, positive, and stay out of the negative, and do what's right about trying to be an influence for good and a blessing to people around about, and stop being down in the mouth. I told my dentist, I said, you're the most down in the mouth person that I know. And that's about what it is. He is down. But that's not for us. You remember how the disciples were so dejected after Christ had died and was buried. When they heard that news, it was like good news, best news that the world has ever heard. He's not dead, he's alive forevermore. Our whole message is good news. Good news. That's what the gospel is good news, good tidings, glad tidings. That's what we're supposed to herald out to this world. I wish I had the time to develop that verse. But basically what I'm trying to say is, shut up. Shut up all this bad news. You're a down in the mouth negative person. Who wants to be around you? They want to be around someone that's optimistic and looking ahead and looking on the sunny side and, and looking for something good to happen. I know you can't always be that way, but I'm telling you, we're character building. We're making Christian workers. We're not going around with us, look like we've been having sour pickles for breakfast every day, and have long face like a mule, just like you've been eating your oatmeal out of a butter churn or something or other, just down the wall. Get on the other side of this thing as a Christian and come at this world with good news and good report. Hallelujah. Amen? I got it straight. Oh, I got it straight. I know I've only got about 4 or 5 more verses. I won't have time to do it, but boy, I really would have liked to have done it. We got three more minutes.
No,
Okay.
three more verses.
3 more? All right. A righteous man falling down before the wicked is as a troubled fountain and a corrupt spring. From this troubled well, this fountain, this corrupt spring is talking about, it's not a very healthy water. And when a man is a good man and he falls, it corrupts everything. It sours everything, makes everything so bad. Testimony is ruined. And what he's trying to say here, we must never allow this to happen. When a righteous man falls before wicked people. And I don't know what would cause this man to fall, but whatever it is, it hurts the cause of Christ. The pressure may be great on you. I don't know. The persistence of this wicked, strong influence that where you're working, or maybe it is some partaking of some sin that looks so satisfying and gratifying. Maybe it's the passion of your flesh, and your hormones are all stirred up and aroused over a woman or over a man, and you seemingly just from day to day are having this trouble with pornography, or perhaps with nudity, or without whatever it might be. If you have to change jobs, if you have to take another route to work, do something to stay away from that person that turns you on, that shouldn't turn you on. It'll hurt you. You say, I just love him so much.
Yes, but it's going to hurt you if you get involved with that person. So you have to guard that thing. It'll make a corrupt spring out of your life. It's been so refreshing. It's been so good for God. Now you've corrupted it, and the path into sin sometimes is very glittering and very attractive. But the pleasures of sin, how long do they last, class? Only a season. That's what the Bible says. And the price that you pay is so great, and the hurt that it brings is so great to your family, to your loved one, to your wife, to your husband, to your children, to your church, to your boss, to your influence. Oh, just stay out of that rather than to corrupt your life, weaken your testimony, and wound the heart of the Lord, and waste the hopes of ever regaining these people, your friends, to win them to Christ. And trouble is, it usually waxes worse and worse as you go farther. As the old adage said, sin will take you farther than you want to go, cause you to stay longer than you want to stay, and cost you more, pay more than you want to pay. It's a dangerous thing to fool around with those lower passions. Verse 27, and I am hurrying. It is not good to eat much honey, so for men to search their own glory is not glory. It's like eating too much honey. Honey is so good. Oh, I love it. I love it. Honest, I could eat buckets of it. I love it. And I have all kinds of honey. People know I like it, and they give me honey. I've got one brand of honey. It's called Tupelo, from a Tupelo tree. The flowers of the Tupelo. It's the most unusual honey you would ever eat in your life. But it's one kind of a honey that doesn't ever crystallize. For some chemical, I don't know what it is, but most honey will crystallize and coagulate and all that kind of stuff. But Tupelo honey will never do that. There's a place in Mississippi called Tupelo, but it's named after the Tupelo tree. But around the panhandle of Florida and that Alabama and that area is where that comes from. But I'm telling you that I love honey. But if I eat too much of it, I get sick. Honey will sour my stomach. You wouldn't think a sweet thing would sour it, but it will. And but people who bring self-glory on themselves sours people. Hast thou found honey? That's what verse 16 says. Eat so much as sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit it. So like self-praise, Abelusting. That was my first wife. One of her favorite sayings was Abelusting, which is German for self-praise smells. And it does. Nobody wants to hear you brag on how wonderful you are, and how good you can shoot a gun, how wonderful you can shoot a basketball, how wonderful you can do this and do that, and my car's bigger and better, and my house is bigger and better, blah, 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 blah. People, shut up and just learn how to talk. And people don't want to hear. You make them sick, just like eating too much honey, to hear you brag on yourself. Let somebody else do the bragging on you. But it's easy. I could fish. I could fish a compliment from Brother Armstrong. And I'd say, well, that sermon last night at church was pretty good, wasn't it, Brother Harvey? Yeah, that was a good message, Brother Green. I fished. I got him to say compliment. We don't need that. We don't need that stuff. Don't go try to push yourself up. It'll all come to the top, one way or the other, or settle at the bottom, one or the other. But compliment the other person.
prefer one another in love, the Bible says. You're better than I am. People don't want to hear us. How wonderful you are. How wonderful are you anyway? Nobody. There's no measure of that kind of stuff. And I'm saying again, I hope you listen to this old man. I hope you listen to me. And buy that book I told you to buy, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Now, he's not a saved man, but it's a little something that'll twist your mind around and help you to learn how to get through life and make friends. There's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Somebody else said there's a sequel to that, How to Skin Friends and Influential People. But it will help you. It'll help you to know how to talk. But don't be a bragger. Don't be a boaster. Don't be a bag of wind, a big shot. It's just, it's like eating honey. Get too much of it, it'll make you sick. And I hope and pray that that will not be your case. Honey is good and it's satisfying, wonderful. But don't eat too much of it. Don't brag, please don't brag. Verse 28, he that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down, and walls, and without walls. He that can't control his passions and his emotions is like a city that without walls. Now, of course, we don't have walls around Lansing, but in the early medieval times and Middle East times, all of those cities, Jerusalem, all of them had walls. Jericho had walls. It was a protection from the army and from the enemy, I should say. But he's speaking basically here about when you don't have rule over your own conscience, when you don't pay attention to the Bible, you don't pay attention to your parents, young people. There's no restraint upon your life. You never listen to the Holy Ghost inside of you, warn you and try to educate you. You rebel against it. You don't pay attention to your pastor. You don't use good sense. I don't know. When you don't rule over yourself and over your spirit and over your passions and over your fleshly desires and over your certain things that resist the wrong, you allow the flesh to have control. And that flesh is weak and it's rotten to the core. And you'll have nothing. Your life will be nothing if you don't control yourself. Have some character. Have some structure. Have some determination to overcome the world and the flesh and the devil. When things are broken down, when the walls are broken down, when the walls are broken down at your home or in your own personal life, you become without structure, nothing to protect you. It's like that wise man that built his house upon the rock. And when the winds came and blew, it moved not, because it was structured on a rock. But the foolish man built his house on the sand, and shiftless, and no foundation for his life. And when the winds came, it fell flat, and great was the fall of his house. And your life will be the same if you don't have structure. Thank you so much. I've kind of run a little bit fast to finish the chapter, but I think
know what affects people. But I never preach or teach without making a prayer, just like I just made, and depending upon the Lord to help. If you try to do something in your flesh, it will profit nothing. But if you trust the Lord, He wants to help people. He will help you with your work, with your life, and whatever, if you trust Him. The last time I taught, I finished up the 25th chapter. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, and it hasn't been my desire necessarily to do that. I fulfilled an obligation, and I'm back now, and this is, of course, the last lesson in this session, this semester, but it'll start back up again next month, and I hope and pray that you'll continue with us, and it won't be long until we'll finish the entire book. I'll try to get as many verses as I can, and I will tonight, but we're not gonna rush it anyway and make it do something wrong. We want to do what's right to help you. Our lesson tonight is, first one is Proverbs 26:1. As snow in the summer and as rain in the harvest, so honor is not seemingly for a fool. You can understand pretty well that snow in the summertime is kind of out of place. And we expect snow here in December, but we don't expect it in August. And rain in the harvest time in Palestine, it was almost an unheard of thing. If you remember the story in the Bible, after Saul had been appointed king, when really God didn't want it that way, he wanted to be king, but the people wanted to be like the other nations and have a king. And so Samuel said, all right, you can have a king. But it's not the perfect will of God, but we'll let you do that. And so Saul was anointed, and now he said, to show you and prove to you that this is not the will of God, we're going to have it rain. And it was harvest time. And they knew it never rained at that time of the year. But he had caused it to rain, a terrible rain, so that the people would know that that was not God's will for them to have a king. I remember reading that in the Bible. You know, that's the story. Well, as snow in the summer and rain in the harvest, so honor is not seemingly for a fool. It's a rare thing to have snow in the summer. It used to be when I was a kid, it used to be a little, I don't know, odyssey of some sort in the funny paper. It wasn't part of the comics, but it was just something that everybody seemed to take an interest in. It was this little thing about that big. It was in the corner of just about every comic strip. It was called Believe It or Not by Robert Ripley, Bob Ripley. And it had all sorts of different things that happened, unusual things that happened. And you didn't have to believe it. He called it Believe It or Not. And I remember as a boy reading in there how that it snowed in Miami, Florida. I believe it was in August. On a hot summer day, it snowed. You say, well, that couldn't be. Well, believe it or not. Ripley said it happened. And to give honor to a fool is not a very likely thing to ever happen. And if it does happen, it is some mischief involved in it. If you're a fool, if you're a nut, if you're some kind of a screwball, it's not likely that you're going to receive any honor for being a screwball. There's something about people who, the Bible calls them fools. It doesn't necessarily mean that this guy is nuts. It doesn't necessarily mean that his elevator doesn't go all the way to the top floor. It doesn't mean that he's mentally deranged. It means that, like in Psalms 14, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. You know, a lot of folks do that. Like this Michael Moore, he is that sort of a mentality that thinks he's going to stamp God out of the world and off of our coins. In God we trust. He doesn't realize that just one poof and he's out in eternity himself. He's a nut. He's not nuts. He's an educated, well-educated man, but he's a fool. And any man's a fool that would do such a thing. But as a Christian, we're talking here, and as a Christian leader, you're not going to gain what you want to gain in your Christian life. You're not going to have much credibility, like a fool doesn't have any credibility. You're going to lose your testimony by doing foolish things. One of the things that you really hardly can afford to lose in this world as a Christian is your testimony. Your testimony is more important than anything else other than your salvation. Now you listen to this old man. I'm an old man and I know what I'm talking about. Your salvation is the most important thing, but your testimony would have to be second. You know, you can't afford to lose your soul, so you get saved. And you can't afford to lose your life, so you dedicate yourself to God. And you can't afford to lose your testimony, so you guard that testimony with your life. I know. It's your influence. It's your regard. It's what people see of your image is your testimony. I guard it with my life. I'm careful who I choose to companion with, because I associate with those of like mind. And if you associate with people who are not living for God, then tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. So you guard your testimony. It's nice. I've noticed most of you young people are really a gracious bunch of kids, and I really love you. And I noticed how that you embrace the visitors, the kids from the bus ministry, and you try to be kind and nice to them, but you don't go home with them and fellowship with them.
If they're not gonna live for God, you're gonna live separated lives. It's good to be gracious and kind to everything and everybody as a Christian to try to win them to Christ. And we're not looking down our nose at them and saying we're better than you are. But we don't associate with that people that don't want to live for God because of our testimony. It would be ruined. You understand that? And you're not going to be able, are you listening, to preach one thing and live something else. Your credibility, you have to do right if you're going to maintain godliness and holiness. It's taken me 50-some years, Brother Dennis, to gain a testimony. I'm not trying to say I'm anything or anybody, but people respect me. Not that I'm, not that I'm all that. I don't wear a halo and that kind of thing, and they won't beautify me and put me in sainthood when I die. And I'm not looking for that, but I try to maintain a testimony over these years. That I could take a testimony that is all these years, I could lose it just like that. Just it's gone. I mean, just tonight, I could lose it. See, how you mean, Brother Wayne? All I'd have to do is cuss. All I'd have to do is swear. All I have to do is smoke a cigarette, drink a can of beer, touch some little lady on her leg. I'm all done. 56 years and I'm done. Washed up. I'm out of the ministry. You say, I don't understand that. Well, I'm trying to tell you this. That's what it is to be in the Lord's work. You can't cuss, damn, swear, and live like hell. You have to live pure, holy, and godly if you're going to maintain your testimony. Our little text says, as snow in the summer and as rain in the harvest, so honor is not seemingly for a fool. You're not going to gain that testimony. If I were you, I would be very careful who I associated myself with, my companions. I'd stay away from some folks. We raised kids. I raised 6 children. And by the grace of God, they're serving the Lord today. But we didn't let them hang around some church kids. So if that isn't right, Brother Green, well, you can do what you want to do, but there are some church kids that you wouldn't want your kids to church around with. Can you understand that? And you're not better than they are. We don't teach that to them. But our testimony means more to us than anything in the world. I try to instill that into my family. You don't go around with your nose up in the air and looking down on people, but you don't associate yourself, and you don't hang around places and worldly things. And I'm honest with you. I have never been to the racetrack, and I don't know if there'd be anything wrong with me going down here to the Spartan Speedway in Mason or Holt or wherever it is and watching a car race. I don't think it'd be anything wrong in it. But when I go down there, I'm associating myself with people that are gambling and horsing around and fooling around, and also I just don't want to get involved in it. I've never seen a horse race. I've never been to a horse race. There wouldn't be anything wrong with that, but your association would be. And I believe I could go and nobody criticize me. But then again, I don't want to get entangled either. You understand what I'm saying? I guess you do, but it doesn't snow in the summertime. And he said it doesn't rain in the harvest. And so, he said, it's not, so honor is not seemingly for a fool. You just have to use some good sense about your life and things that are just not right and out of place. And it would be awful out of place if to have a snowstorm in August. That'd be out of place, and you're out of place. And your whole testimony, and don't hang around with fools. Did I make any sense?
Amen.
All right, I don't want to just be babbling around here like an idiot. But let's notice verse 2. And as the bird, by wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse, causeless, shall not come. That's kind of a little unique verse. Though it's real, I was this today. Early on, I just got back from a long trip from the other side of the world, New Guinea, and I'm tired. And I worked for a while this morning, and then I laid down for a few minutes to rest because my mind is still not settled, and we have a glass-in roof at our house. In our bedroom, it's one of those like they have at these restaurants that come down like this. And our bed's right under the glass, and we can watch the trees and the leaves and it's just the clouds. And I think it's the most wonderful thing in the world. I love it. But we watch the birds a lot. You can see the birds coming and going. And I said to my wife, I said, look at that. There's 6 or 8 birds on that one limb. And about 2 seconds later, there was 20 birds on that limb. And about 2 seconds later, they were gone. And then they come back. And they're flighty. I guess that's a good word for birds, they're flighty. But you don't know what they're doing. You say, what in the world are they doing? Why did they go this way? Why didn't they go that way? And what's going on? Well, that's what he's saying here. It's really quite obvious that we don't know the object of the motions of these birds coming and going, why they do what there must be some reason for them doing what they do, but I have never been able to figure out why they do what they do. And he said, so is it about a curse that comes to our life. It's, even though you don't understand it all, there's a cause behind everything that happens. There's a cause why those birds going this way and that way, and I don't understand that, but there is a cause for that. And that's what he's talking about, and that without some sort of a reason, things happen in our life, but they don't happen without some cause for that happening. And all things that are happening around about us are ordered by God. Our God allows them, at least, to take place. Notice that verse, the curse causeless shall not come. There's a reason for all things. And it may not be obvious to us, Brother Greg, why there's sickness, maybe in our family, why death comes in our family, why one of our loved ones is handicapped, or maybe, I noticed last night one lady came to me after church and All she said was, cancer. That's all she said was, cancer. I said, what do you, and she could, I can't talk, just cancer. And she went down the hall and out the door, a precious one of Our Ladies. So evidently she must have got word, either about her or her husband. I haven't got back with her to know what she meant. But when it strikes into our hearts and our lives, we don't know why. But the curse of that, causeless, does not come. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that accident. Really, most accidents aren't accidents. There's a cause for that thing to have happened. Born blind or deaf or in poverty poor or lose your job or maybe mentally deranged or some marital problem or maybe a divorce or some serious condition in the home that doesn't ever go away. The curse of that just didn't happen. There's a cause behind that. God has allowed it to take place. Sin brings a curse. And it may not be your fault, but the sins of our fathers, back to the third and fourth generation, are passed on to us. And the reason you're having difficulty with your studies in school may be something that was cockeyed in your great-grandfather. Or maybe the liquor problem that you're having. The curse of that liquor has fallen to the third and fourth generation. Or maybe the divorce. Or maybe that hard-headed stupidity of ignorance that lays inside your brains. You have a hard time focusing. You have a hard time picking up on what's around about you. You're not really alert to understand. That could be something from a former, oh, I said, I don't believe all that stuff. Well, who cares? Who cares whether you believe it or not? I didn't write the Bible. He said that our sins are passed to the third and fourth generation. And some of that is your own cause, your own reason, because of your own sin and your own laziness. You don't have any money. I never really had a lot. I never had money. Never had a lot of money at all. I've got, I haven't enough to live on here. But you notice, I'm going on 78 years old, and I'm still preaching and teaching and working because I don't have any money. I couldn't retire and last a year. It's not the only reason. I believe the Lord wants me to keep on keeping on, but I mean, a lot of people who have been in a business for 50 years, they've retired a long time ago. But I don't have any money. I mean, if I had your money, I could retire, I'm sure of that. But at least I'm trying to say to you is, if you don't have money, there could be some reason why you don't have it. Maybe because you didn't get a good education to put you up in another caliber of educated people who get better jobs. It could be because of some mental problems. It could be of some handicap situation where you couldn't really physically labor like somebody else could. But there's a cause behind everything and a reason for that cause. And that's what he's saying. I'm really not a fatalist. A fatalist believes what will be if it never happens. You didn't catch on that at all. But you get to be a fatalist, you believe that everything is going to be whatever is going to be. Like the fellow that fell down, that was really a strong fatalist, and he fell down the basement stairs. When he hit the bottom, he said, "Thank God that's over with." If it was going to happen, it was going to happen, and he's done. But I do know, though, that everything is a reason for it, and I have a pet peeve. I don't expose it much, but it bothers me that people are. I would imagine there is some poor people in America, poor people, that are really poor because of being poor. But if it was really the truth about it, they're poor many times because they're sorry, lazy, good-for-nothing bums. And they won't work, they won't get an education, they won't develop themselves, they won't go into any strenuous sort of a situation. They want it all handed out to them. And that kind of poor business is poor business in my mind. I have very little patience with that kind of stuff. And I can see a brother or a person, a sister, falling into poverty because of circumstances and things that come into it. I can understand that. And there are probably many people who are poor because of, the husband dies and he's the breadwinner and she's left alone to raise these kids. And I can understand them being poor. But just to be sorry and good for nothing, stupid bum and a hippie type screwball, I have no patience with that crowd. We could probably cut the substances that we give to the people in this country about in half if I was in authority to cut it in half. They don't deserve it. They're living off the government. And I want to tell you something. This is my little pet peeve, and I'll just preach a little bit. I think everybody ought to work for a living.
Amen.
And if you can't work for a living, then I am ready to help you. I want to help you. But if you're a sorry, good-for-nothing bum, you're worthless. To me, you're worthless. I'm not hateful towards you, but I just say you're a worthless screwball, in my mind. Sin brings a curse, and stubbornness, bullheadedness in your life will bring a curse to your life. Sex sins, stealing sins, liquor. I just say, without having to question, you don't understand why the birds go this way or the birds go that way. You don't understand what's going on, but the cause of that, there is a cause and there is a reason behind it all, and there is a reason if you're having a curse on your life, if something's not just exactly the way it should be. There's a reason for that. And the curse caused us does not come. My only philosophy is to live right and do right. And I know that if you don't live right, your sin will ever be before you. So I don't know what's wrong with me, Brother Grain. I don't know what's wrong. You do too. Every time you kneel down to pray as a Christian, your sin comes right up into your face. And you know it does. I'm going to say it again. You know what's wrong with you. There's some sin, something you're coddling in your life that you don't want to surrender to God. And when you ever get real serious and get down to pray, that comes up in your face. That's when you need to confess it and forsake it and rip it up by the roots and